Today, we seek to move beyond the accomplishments of the past, to establish the principle that all the people are entitled to a decent way of life. This is the most demanding goal of all. We have made a good start on our journey, but we have still a long way to go. The conquest of poverty is as difficult, if not more difficult, than the conquest of outer space. And we can expect moments of frustration and disappointment. But we have no doubt about the outcome. For all history shows that the effort to win progress represents the most determined and steadfast aspirations of man. Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures. And we are all mortal.
SERVIR is a joint NASA and USAID program where we're working with developing countries around the world and strengthening their ability to use satellites to address the many problems that they have, including floods, fires, harmful algal blooms, and other types of events that they have where they can use satellites to really make better decisions.
We're using space information to help decisions that affect people in the village where they live.
When there's a major disaster, governments around the world come together and they provide all of the satellite data basically that the world has to offer. But there's smaller disasters that occur in the countries that we work in that may not make the front page of the New York Times, but in that country it's a really big deal. We asked ourselves, could we make a difference if we had a dedicated imager for acquiring imagery quickly after natural disasters and to be able to provide that imagery back to the countries that need them, that have real decisions that need to be made with a very quick turnaround. As NASA, we looked in our own backyard and started thinking, could we use the International Space Station? The International Space Station was really a fantastic asset to take advantage of because it passes over 90% of the Earth's populated area every 24 hours. We developed an imaging system and we called it iServe, which basically is a camera and a telescope system that sits inside the International Space Station and can collect imagery when it passes over natural disasters or other events that we need to collect imagery.
Initially, we were planning to take a few pictures per day.
So we contacted all the USAID missions around the world, and in total we had more than 2,000 requests coming, for people who need images from iServe.
And we moved to like 1,000 images per day.
We provided iServe imagery for many, many natural disasters, including floods and fires, for deforestation, for volcanic eruptions, for earthquakes. So it was really a fantastic example showing how imagery from the International Space Station could be used in these times of dire need.
And now we have a huge archives of images of areas around the world. So this is something that was not really there before.
iServe is an example of, in essence, making the International Space Station even more international and connecting space to village to better understand and protect our home planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Associate Administrator of USAID, Eric Postel.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. How are you all doing? Good. I especially want to welcome our guests from other U.S. government agencies that are here today, as well as our USAID staff overseas who are participating via the internet. Some might ask, what does an agency focusing on people earning less than $1.25 a day have in common with an agency that just flew by Pluto? And my answer is, more than you think. First, in my view of this, both NASA and USAID have staff, such as all of you, who are incredibly committed to our respective missions. Secondly, we are both constantly asked to justify to all of our fellow citizens in the United States who confront many challenges in their own lives and their communities why scarce tax dollars should be devoted to our missions. And lastly, both agencies can only succeed with teamwork, science, technology, and innovation. That's why we're thrilled to host today's event, which highlights just part of our unique partnership with NASA to enhance USAID's impact by harnessing the power of science and technology. The satellite imagery that's going to be up here on the screen behind me pretty soon is a live feed from the International Space Station. At the moment, this very moment, it's passing over the South Atlantic at 17,500 miles per hour, making a complete rotation around the Earth roughly every 90 minutes. So by the end of this one event, that satellite will have passed over 18 different countries where we have USAID operations. For more than 50 years, NASA has sparked the nation's curiosity about our planet and the universe beyond it. Its incredible images, such as the ones we're going to see, remind us of what we share and stress the urgency of protecting it. From the vantage point of space, I'm told, NASA monitors our oceans and atmosphere and land and has these incredible vistas of our planet. And they make this data available, free and open to the public. This is clearly an incredible resource for science, and it also plays a key role in advancing our development goals. USAID is very proud to partner with NASA on a whole variety of programs. One example is this program that you started to hear about and you're going to hear more about, which is the SERVIR program, which works in collaboration with organizations around the world to help developing countries make use of the information coming from these Earth-observing satellites. For example, by working together, we've improved the warning times about floods in Bangladesh. We provided tea industry growers in Kenya a tool to predict frost before it damages their valuable crops. And you know what a difference that can make to incomes in poor families. And help Central America reduce the public health impacts of harmful algal blooms. Building on the success of SERVIR in Central America, in Eastern and Southern Africa and the Himalayan region, just 2 weeks ago, USAID and NASA launched the SERVIR Mekong operation to help Asia's lower Mekong region better adapt to the changing climate and manage forests and land sustainably. But we have a lot of other programs between our two agencies that harness the power of science, data, and technology. For example, there's PEER, the Partnerships for Enhanced Engagement in Research, which helps build local capacity by linking scientists in the developing countries with NASA and other scientists in the United States. Our Middle East Bureau alone has 3 different collaborations with NASA, including working with its Water Information Systems platform via their Goddard Space Flight Center. Through these programs, USAID and NASA are working hand in hand to protect the world's most vulnerable people and to build a world that is safer, cleaner, and more prosperous for everyone. With that, I'd like to welcome NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden. Since 2009, he has led the U.S. space program, overseeing a new era of scientific exploration and technological advancement. Administrator Bolden served our country for more than 30 years in the United States Marine Corps before retiring as a Major General in 2003. So I guess that's another commonality. Both agencies are led by former generals. During his service, he spent 14 years as a member of NASA's astronaut office, traveling to space 4 times aboard the space shuttle. We are very fortunate to have Administrator Bolden and 2 other astronauts from his team with us here today. We're very fortunate to count them and their incredible team as our valued partner in our work. And Administrator Lenhart, who wanted to be here today but has another board meeting to be at, he just a few minutes ago said how much he wants to deepen and expand this partnership. So please join me in welcoming Administrator Bolden from NASA. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Eric, for the very warm welcome and introduction. I had an opportunity to meet with your administrator a little bit earlier, and I think he and I are of like minds when it comes to strengthening the relationship between our agencies. We're both really excited about it. I will say a couple of things. I do have prepared remarks, but I generally, for those of you who have seen me before, I have a hard time just going right to my prepared remarks. Eric and I were sitting there, and he said, how's everything going? I said, well, it's going pretty well. And knowing what he's talking about, this being budget time. And he said, you know, you must get worn down with all this stuff that's going on. And I didn't get an opportunity to respond to him, but I was going to say I really get fired up. I get inspired by watching all of you do what you do. NASA is like USAID. We're a people organization. You know, people always think about rocket ships and machines and stuff like that, but we're an organization of about 18,000 civil servants, and we had this discussion this morning in our staff meeting. How many contractors? Well, it depends on how you count and where you count. About 40,000 contractors around the world, actually, when you get down to it. And that's who we are. We're the people. We're not the machines. You know, John Grunsfeld, who heads our Science Mission Directorate, who is also an astronaut, a big-time Hubble repairman, when we landed Curiosity on Mars, we were at the Jet Propulsion Lab, and John, as we were celebrating and having a session like this with all the folk from JPL in the press conference, John said, I want to make a prediction at the podium. And I went, oh my goodness, this is really bad. You know, let's not make predictions, especially the Science Mission Directorate head. And I'm sitting there just holding my breath, and John said, I predict Curiosity will discover nothing. And I mean, my heart sank. And I went, John, he said, Curiosity will discover nothing because it's a robot. The discoveries will be made by the thousands of people down here on Earth who will take the data that comes from Curiosity, interpret it, and put it to use for people on Earth. And I went, whew, I think I can live with that. So the things that Eric talked about and the things that you'll hear me talk about, you know, they're mostly robots. And it's all of you in this organization and in our organization over at NASA and other sister organizations around the government who really make a difference and make things happen. And with that, you know, everything starts with a dream. Not sure how many of you know about, some of you down here on the front know where I'm going. Everything starts with a dream. SERVIR started with a dream in the mind of a guy sitting down here on the front row, and you saw him. Dan Irwin, who is a NASA employee at Marshall Space Flight Center. Every time I think about this, I get giddy. I get goosebumps. You know, he's a civilian in Guatemala and doing volunteer work. And he essentially told you about it on the screen there. But he met this young lady by the name of Carrie Stokes, who is over here, who belongs to you. And I don't know the whole story, but what I do know is that 2 people from 2 different organizations were drawn together, and from that was born what is now SERVIR. And it is in my estimation, one of the most powerful, just awesome tools that our two organizations are able to give to humanity, if you will. So with that, hopefully you understand what a great privilege it is for me to be here with all of you, with my colleagues from the U.S. Agency for International Development and others who may be from other government organizations. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you whose dedication to improving conditions worldwide, as Eric talked about a little bit earlier, is driving so much positive change. It's also wonderful to share this event with all of you who are so interested in the future of our planet and with astronauts. Everybody loves astronauts. You know, except for who? Hey, come on. Terry, you didn't hear that, but under his breath, Terry said, except for our bosses. Having been one time, we are kind of hard to handle, you know, while we're there. So anyway, but shucks, Terry, you distract me. But we do have today with us astronauts Terry Virts and Samantha Cristoforetti, who recently returned from space and are helping us make research and technology breakthroughs that benefit people worldwide. And I know you want me to sit down so I can hand it over to them, and I'm going to do that. But I want to congratulate the members of the SERVIR team, many of whom are with us today. On the launch of the network's newest hub, SERVIR Mekong. It was an incredible pleasure for me to be there in Bangkok and have an opportunity to participate in the ribbon cutting, which, though symbolic, for me was just something very, 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 very special. Bringing the capabilities of SERVIR to that part of the world, where, as Eric talked about, you know, we are making it possible for people to make forecast on flooding and other kinds of things that will result in the saving of many, many, many lives. It was a great pleasure to be there together with the Regional Development Mission for Asia, Mission Director Beth Page. And for those of you who may know Beth or know of her, that was her first day at work. So quite a big first day for her. And we had flown over from DC together and had gotten to know each other on the flight. SERVIR is making a huge difference in the lives of people in diverse regions with a wealth of data and tools derived from our incredible fleet of Earth observation satellites. It's truly connecting space to village, and I know it took a lot of people to make that happen. So thank you to USAID for your ongoing partnership and friendship. We're accomplishing a lot together, and the fact that we have been able to launch this important new hub in the SERVIR network, which includes SERVIR Himalaya, SERVIR Eastern and Southern Africa, and the Applied Sciences Team projects in Mesoamerica, is certainly tangible proof that what we're doing is working. We get a lot of questions about our Earth observation work at NASA. Eric sort of implied that, particularly from the Congress. You know, why? In fact, a lot of people aren't even aware that it's such a core function of our agency. But make no mistake, NASA is deeply committed to Earth science and the value it provides to people around the globe. We have been since our founding. The more the SERVIR network and our other partnerships expand, the more opportunities we have to test and showcase our newest Earth observation satellites. Missions like Global Precipitation Measurement, GPM, or the Soil Moisture Active Passive, SMAP, as we like to call it, and others are now returning massive amounts of data, and more Earth science missions are on the way. The International Space Station also is becoming a platform for Earth observations, as Terry and Samantha can agree. There's the iServe testbed camera used by SERVIR that you heard described a little bit in the video that you saw. It's for SERVIR end users. For instance, it has acquired more than 140,000 images of across 6 continents to support responses to floods, wildfires, tropical storms, and other extreme weather events around the world. Other instruments aboard the station including RapidScat to monitor ocean winds and the Cloud Aerosol Transport System, or CATS, to measure clouds and pollution, also are contributing to the wealth of Earth science data available to the public and to decision makers like those SERVIR serves. Astronauts like Terry and Samantha also take a lot of great pictures that they share with millions via social media. We like to say about Station that we're working off the planet for the planet. And I think that equally applies to SERVIR. Together, we're contributing to the effort to help bring our space-based science down to Earth for real-time, real-world applications that are changing the lives of people where they live. I'm also pleased that we're finding ways to bring NASA's science to meet USAID's development objectives. We're excited that our scientists are being connected with international scientists to combine those people's local knowledge with NASA's Earth System Science Studies through USAID's Partnership for Enhanced Engagement in Research, or PEER, as Eric formally talked about. 12 of our scientists now work with USAID-funded international collaborators to harness their collective knowledge for the benefit of development. Our partnership between NASA and USAID allows us to work together to bring space to village. Moreover, it also now is bringing village to space, as NASA has learned new USAID terminology such as results framework, indicators, and theory of change. Terms that are more than just words, but help benchmark impacts and ensure the successful outcome of our activities. Together, our agencies have worked in 4 regions and 37 countries, developed 62 tailored decision support tools with Earth observations, increased the capacity of over 300 institutions, enabled 120 university fellows from 24 countries, and trained now over 2,000 people. Just as the space station has become a model of international cooperation among nations who have many differences, so has SERVIR become the network not just of hubs, but also of regions and people. I can't think of anything more gratifying to demonstrate why our space program is vital to everyone on this planet. So I couldn't be happier to join all of you today as we celebrate the partnership between NASA and USAID through the use of Earth science from our satellites, as well as instruments and astronauts on the International Space Station, and to look to the future. There are challenges ahead. Our planet is changing and we have a lot of work to do. The good news is we have a lot of information coming in, more Earth science missions on the way, and a lot of passion, dedication, and expertise on the part of all of you. In fact, right here in this room and around the world by your colleagues, to help us face the future and make it brighter for everyone. Earth is, after all, in my mind, the most important planet for every one of us. With networks like SERVIR, the science partnerships through PEER, and the innovation I see all over the world in Earth science, I'm confident that the best is yet to come. Don't take her out. She's probably the only one that was listening. Hi. I love it. I'm a grandpa. It's now my pleasure to introduce NASA astronaut Colonel Terry Virts and Italian astronaut Captain Samantha Cristoforetti, 2 fellow pilots who came from their respective countries' air forces. Together, they recently helped us conclude a successful expedition aboard the International Space Station, with Terry as commander of Expedition 43. Samantha's career is helping to make the science fiction she loves become science fact. Together, these astronauts took us one step closer to expanding our human experience throughout the solar system. They're both intrepid explorers with a deep love for space. Please join me in a warm welcome for Terry Virts and Samantha Cristoforetti. Yeah, come on up. Come on up. Come on up. Thanks a
lot. Thanks, General Bolden. I appreciate that. And I love the mission of USAID, and I know Samantha does too. It's a wonderful thing to see people who are doing work around the world. We had the privilege of seeing the world from a really unique perspective. And I know that you hear this, and you've heard other people say it in the past, and I'm going to say it again, and it sounds cliche-ish, but it's true. When you look down on Earth from space, you usually don't see borders. Occasionally you do. I'll talk about that here in a second. But we do share the same planet, and you look at the Earth, it looks so beautiful from space, and oftentimes we look down, and my bucket list of places to go has grown a lot since I've gotten a chance to see the Earth. But we talk about, you know, hey, this is a beautiful place, but we knew what was happening down there. It was not good at all for the people living down there. And it's kind of sobering to be back from space and look down on creation and see what a wonderful planet we have, but also realize the challenges that people had on Earth. And I talk about borders, and usually you can't see that. In Europe, it's a kind of a continuous stream of the continent there, and there's millions of little borders that you just can't tell from space. Same thing across Africa. There's lots of these man-made borders that don't exist for any real reason other than they got put there on a map by people a long time ago. There's a few places that you can see borders, and two that stick out to me was the Pakistan-Indian border, and I think by far the most visible one from space is the North Korean-South Korean border. And when you see that, and you really see it at night is when you see it, and you just think, what a total disaster that is for those poor people living. And at nighttime, it's real dark there. And during the daytime around Earth, you can't see that much human activity. You can see contrails from clouds. You can see the large cities, but largely human existence and activities. You know, if aliens came by, they might not notice us during the day. But at nighttime, it's really obvious. And what you see is not population centers. You see wealth. And, you know, obviously America is super bright, and Asia is incredibly bright nowadays. Europe is very bright. But there's other places on Earth where there's millions or billions of people living that's pretty dark. And that was an interesting perspective, too, to see night as not necessarily a population indicator, but more of a wealth indicator, which was a unique perspective from living in space. We talked about the iServe instrument, and there's rapid scat, and there's other cameras and instruments that we have on the station. Like General Bolden talked about the robots, but one of the really cool things about being an astronaut is that we got to be the human aspect of taking pictures. And so there would be natural disasters. We saw several typhoons approaching the Philippines, and I got to take pictures of that. And although there's certainly weather satellites and there's official ways to monitor cyclones, the human aspect of, hey, this is a really dangerous storm, you guys should be careful, and that gets put out on the local news. And like Samantha was saying, if even one person got warned to take shelter, then that was a really unique way that we used the space station to warn people of impending natural disasters. There was a really bad storm in the North Atlantic this past winter that hit England, and it was all over the British press, some pictures that we took at nighttime of this moonlit aurora, but this terrible hurricane going over England, and that had a big effect. This spring in America, we had some really bad storms in Texas, and we got a chance to take time-lapse pictures at night of this lightning going off. That's one of the most amazing things to see from space. But it was a way to kind of warn people on Earth that, hey, we're looking at this from space, and it can reach people in a different way than the technical data that's very important, and we need those instruments to see it. But that's one way that we as astronauts got to impact the Earth, and hopefully a few people to see the weather patterns and other things that can affect their lives.
Yeah, I second all that. But what I'd like to share is that I've had an incredible privilege, which is to be part of the crew of the International Space Station. And I call it humanity's outpost in space. And it's an incredible facility. It's a marvelous place. And for me, yeah, it's really like science fiction. You take off on a rocket, and then your ship magically, the computer does it all on its own. It finds this destination, this human destination in outer space. And they open the hatch for you, and there's friends who welcome you, and there's food, and there is water, and there is a bed, sort of, a sleeping bag where you can float and sleep. And to me, it's amazing, and it's a testament to what we as human beings can do if we really care about something, if we have something big that we want to achieve, like putting something amazing like the International Space Station up there in space. It's the product of 20-plus years of very productive international cooperation. Took 10 years to build, and now we're doing amazing things up there. We're doing incredible research in the most diverse fields, from life science to material science to combustion, stuff that expands human knowledge, but hopefully also improves the lives of the people on Earth and the people that you try to help with your work every day. And so one of the things when you're up there on the space station, you're up there as a crew, an international crew. It was, the two of us and another American first, Butch Wilmore, and then later Scott Kelly, and 3 Russians. And you are in this piece of, humanity out there, and it's the 6 of you, and you have to take care of each other. And it's so incredibly obvious, when it's the 6 of you up there as a crew, you have to take care of each other. It's absolutely important that everybody is doing well, and it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that everybody else is doing well. Otherwise, things will go wrong, very wrong. And so then you look out the window and, there's Spock,
Spock.
Anyway, you look out the window and you see Earth. And it's so obvious when you look at it from outside that Earth is nothing else than a spaceship, just like our International Space Station. It's just a lot bigger, and it's been there for a long time. But it's really a spaceship that takes us on this journey through space. And so the billions of human beings who are on the planet, and I guess probably are animals too in a way, but let's focus on humans today. We're really the crew of this spaceship. And so just like on the space station, we have to take care of each other, then I kind of figured, we have to figure out a way that we take care of each other on the planet too. And it's a lot easy when it's only 6 people. It's a lot harder when it's 7 billion. And of course, I'm preaching to the choir here, because you obviously here at USAID, that's what you do, right? You work every day to try and take care of the crew of this planet. And so I thank you for that, and I congratulate you on this work. And I hope we can do more and more of this. I'm proud of the little that maybe I could do as a crew member of the International Space Station. Maybe I did take a couple of pictures. We did get, it was put on our schedule. There is this international disaster charter that you guys probably know more about than I ever will. But so we got warned, you're passing over this place and there is a flood or there is a volcano eruption or there's been an earthquake, please try and take pictures. And so we tried and did our best. And so hopefully we could contribute a little bit as well to the amazing work that you guys do. But my main message is really thank you for everything you do for the crew of this planet.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. Are we doing questions now? Is that the next one? I'm happy to take questions. Yeah. Over here. Okay, we're getting vectored this way.
Okay.
A farmer in Kenya whose crop is threatened by frost damage. A district forest officer in Nepal who won't discover remote fire for hours or even days. And a fisherman in El Salvador working in waters made unsafe by outbreaks of microalgae. 3 groups of people from across the globe with 3 difficult problems. What do they all have in common? They all lack key information that would empower them to address local challenges. In order to solve these problems, we must look to science and technology. Extraordinary work is being done in space to collect information about the Earth. And SERVIR, a joint initiative of NASA and USAID, works to connect space to village. SERVIR's global network of hubs streamlines access to data and imagery from satellites, so analysts can integrate this information into tools and models that are accessible to those who need it most. In Kenya, satellite mapping predicts potential frost areas, giving farmers time to prepare. In Nepal, near real-time fire alerts are sent via SMS and email, so forest managers learn more quickly about fires burning in their districts. In El Salvador, satellite imagery helps locate microalgae, allowing fishermen to avoid these areas. Around the world, SERVIR is improving awareness about these tools and data, increasing access to information, and supporting targeted analysis, all to help people manage challenges made more difficult by a changing climate. Food security, water resources, land use change, and natural disasters. Partnering with leading organizations around the world, SERVIR operates in 4 regions with activities in more than 30 countries and counting. SERVIR gives local users the tools and skills they need to manage risk and make more informed decisions. Decisions that improve the everyday lives of people everywhere. Check out what SERVIR is doing to connect Earth observation technology to improve development and help us continue finding innovative ways to connect space to village.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming. I want to thank our NASA guests for being here, as well as our interagency colleagues, and of course the AID staff here in Washington and missions around the world. My name is Charles North. I'm the Deputy Assistant Administrator in the Bureau for Economic Growth, Education, and Environment. So we have a panel here to talk about the SERVIR project, which you've been hearing about, this collaboration between USAID and NASA to apply satellite imagery to development challenges. With me on the panel, Dan Irwin, who is the Director of NASA's SERVIR Coordination Office, Jenny Frankel-Reed, who is the Senior Climate Change Specialist in the E3 Bureau, and Kerry Stokes, the USAID Chief Geographer and the Director of the Geo Center. So let me just say, E3 is very proud to be the home of the coordination from AID's side of the SERVIR project. For us, it's a demonstration of how we can use innovative partnerships to have impact on development around the world. I was at NASA headquarters earlier this year, and we were talking about the progress of the project, and I let it slip that when my first assignment with AID was in Kenya, I was managing a project to support what is now one of the SERVIR hubs. And I noted in my talking points that said that was decades ago. I'll leave that one out. But when we think about SERVIR, we tend to think about the really cool technology and the beautiful images. But from my experience and what we've talked about, SERVIR is very much about building capacity. It's about building capacity in these hubs that are so critical to making this project successful, but also for the sustainability of our investment in this work and the satellite imagery and bringing it to the villages. So let me turn to the panel. Let me start with Dan. This collaboration, this partnership has been going on for a long time. Perhaps you can give us a bit more sense of how it's evolved over time and where it started.
Sure, thank you, Charles. And I'll go way back. In 1993, way before working with NASA, I was working for a conservation nonprofit in Guatemala. And my job was to help map and demarcate a new protected area, Maya Biosphere Reserve, that had been set up. And my job was literally walking through the jungle with survey equipment, day after day, month after month, to map out this reserve. And about a year after doing this, and this, I was in the best shape I had ever been in, but it was really exhausting. About a year later, a NASA scientist came down to do some research in Guatemala, and I met up with him, and he rolls out all of these satellite images. And I was blown away because literally I'd spent the last year walking, and I saw everything right there in front of me. And it really changed my life, and not only recognizing how it could benefit the work I was doing, but working with communities, working with villages, and understanding the ability to show the advance of the agricultural frontier, deforestation, and other things that were affecting them. Fast forward about 12 years later, I joined NASA, and still had that notion in mind, the value of satellite imagery and data for development purposes. And I was at a meeting with environmental ministers of Central America, and they were talking about all of these big issues: deforestation, air quality, harmful algal blooms, transboundary issues, and their development concerns. And really that's where I started thinking, could we develop some sort of regional platform or system to help the countries of Central America? But recognizing NASA is a space imagery, and we have that unique vantage point of space, really to make it successful, we needed a team with a development partner. So I kept hearing about this woman, Kerry Stokes, at the meetings I would go to. So I cold called her and said, hi, I'm Dan Irwin from NASA. And it's really funny because a backstory is that I'm from Washington, D.C. area, living in Huntsville, Alabama at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Carrie is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up, her father working at the Marshall Space Flight Center, working in Washington, D.C. So it was almost a magical synergy that happened there. We really recognize the unbelievable synergies that we could develop as two very different yet complementary agencies. And really that's how SERVIR was born. We opened up our first hub in Central America in 2005, Eastern and Southern Africa in 2008, Hindu Kush Himalaya 2010, and just 2 weeks ago, SERVIR Mekong in Bangkok. And really the excitement continues because as NASA develops new capabilities, whether it be the GPM satellite or SMAP, the Soil Moisture Active Passive, and USAID working with them and trying to advance food security and other related issues, it's really bringing to bear some of the best assets. And also I want to point out that it is NASA and USAID, but the unbelievable value of teaming with other phenomenal U.S. government agencies, Department of Interior, US EPA, NOAA, USGS, really make it possible. Thank you.
Fantastic. Jenny, maybe you can give us a sense of how countries are using the technology, the imagery, what successes there have been, and even the challenges we face.
Yeah, great. So we heard the statistics, but we always ask, so what? And a lot of my colleagues in NASA hate when I ask that. But I'll share a few examples because we're very holding ourselves accountable to that. One example, the first one, breaks through barriers of data availability and data sharing. And in Bangladesh, the floodwaters that come each monsoon season come from countries outside of Bangladesh's borders. And so their ability to get the most advanced early warning depends on getting a read of the river flow hundreds of miles outside of their boundary. And a really innovative NASA-funded scientist wanted to test whether river height data gathered from a satellite could improve the lead time for the flood forecasting and warning center in Bangladesh, and it's proven very accurate and effective. And so from an up to 5-day warning, Bangladesh, for most parts that are highly flood prone now, has up to 8 days lead time. And what we've seen in the last monsoon season was a flood that typically would have taken a couple thousand lives, took 17. So that's extremely exciting. The second example of success relates to using these tools to more efficiently use scarce government resources. So the example is actually the red tide tool that we heard about. Thousands of people were getting sick and some people were dying before this public health system was put into place. Having that map allows the governments of Central America to more efficiently target where they sample shellfish. And so it's saving government resources, helping them to target where they work. And since the program has been developed, no illnesses or deaths have been associated with contaminated seafood. The last one is about building local capacity. So like Charles said, we don't want to be the providers of this kind of analysis into the future. We want to help our partners to be able to do that. And so a tool was developed that integrated satellite rainfall data into the hydrologic model for East Africa. And the objective was to predict floods. Now we have working groups formed in Rwanda, in Kenya, in Namibia, and Uganda that are working on what more can be done with that capability. Hydropower companies that are coming to ask about what the government knows about river flows are using that model because there are no longer stream gauges in those rivers, but the data is able to fill that gap. They're able to identify low flow periods and to inform the allocation of water for irrigation and other uses. That's coming from the hub. That's coming from our SERVIR partner, not necessarily even from NASA anymore now that that data is being integrated. So on challenges, there are a lot, but the one I want to point out is relevant to all of us at USAID in particular, which is that there are limits to what regional institutions can do to go beyond the national level, to get this information actually into the hands of individuals at the local level. If we're able to provide fire alerts or analyze fire patterns, what we need is a program that's working with community forest managers to take that data further. If we're able to identify crop anomalies, we need a program that's working with farmers. And so we're working very hard within USAID to create stronger connections between our field programs and our SERVIR capabilities, so that once these tools and capabilities are developed, we have all of our programs all around the world that can take them up and really bring them down to the local level.
Thanks, Jenny. Dan and Carrie, looking beyond the hubs, as Jenny was talking about, I understand we're reaching out to universities and to youth. Maybe you guys could give us some sense of what's happening there.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's probably nothing more exciting than working with youth and university students around the world. There's several examples, as Administrator Bolden mentioned, the SERVIR fellowships over the past few years, where we had 120 fellowships in 24 countries where top-notch university students were selected to develop a project using NASA data, geospatial technologies to address a real-world problem in their country, and to be teamed with a mentor and to really learn all sorts of new applications and research capabilities. So we have that example. All of our SERVIR hubs work very closely with universities. The new Mekong hub has a university network. The government of Nepal, we've learned, really relies on the knowledge of universities for decision makers. So we work very closely with the universities in that network. And even broader than SERVIR, there's the NASA Space Apps Challenge, which is an annual event, global event, where groups come together around the world to develop applications to meet various challenges using NASA data and other satellite data. It's a phenomenal event. I participated in one in Nepal 2 years ago, 2 days working with almost no sleep to really come up with a product at the end. And then finally, I want to mention SERVIR's sister program, Develop, which is a phenomenal opportunity for students in the U.S. To work 10 weeks, either spring, summer, or fall semester, where they can work on a real application product or project with an end user in mind, whether it be a government agency or a nonprofit that has a real decision that needs to be made. And what's nice is these are U.S. students often working on international projects related to SERVIR, and many international students in the U.S. also become develop professionals and work on this as well. So for example, there were Thai scholars here in the U.S. at different NASA centers and universities over the summer, and they were working on specific projects to support Thailand and also the SERVIR hub here together with U.S. students. So it was a phenomenal partnership.
Fantastic. Carrie?
Sure. So learning from some of the work that started with SERVIR in the My Community, Our Earth program, here at USAID in the Geo Center, we have established a program called Mapping for Resilience. And the whole idea here is to pair university students in the U.S. with university students in the developing countries in which USAID works. And we're not only creating new geospatial data that will be useful for USAID programs, we're investing in the next generation, trying to provide skills for students where they learn to map their world. And that information is made available on an open platform for anyone to access, including USAID and our partners. So we'd like to think of this program as investing in the next generation of maps for USAID and the next generation of mappers for the world.
Thanks, Carrie. Maybe you can speak a bit more about how our aid missions around the world and folks here in Washington can access the data, access the tools that SERVIR has developed, and so forth.
Sure. I think you've seen quite a bit, and the program continues to grow. I'd say there's probably 3 primary ways that USAID can really take advantage of what we've been able to create in the last 10 years of this program. First and foremost is to directly access the data and the products and the tools through the product catalog, and that's at the servirglobal.net website. Very intuitive, very easy to browse through, even for USAID staff who may not be astronauts, who may not have designed programs to analyze satellite imagery or had the view from space themselves. But we encourage you to please try that out and fly around a bit to see what you can get access to. We also have an incredible SERVIR team here based in Washington, led by Jenny, as well as a team in the field with our USAID missions. That's really been a learning experience for us to recognize we needed to have a connection, not just from space to village, but from space to our USAID missions, where we program so much of our work that does affect people on the ground. So we've got SERVIR liaisons and experts housed currently in our regional mission in East Africa, in Nairobi, in now RDMA in Southeast Asia, soon coming in West Africa in Accra, and of course in Kathmandu with the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. So we've got a team there who can directly link USAID staff to the SERVIR hubs. The third way is to call upon the services of the GeoCenter. And that's a team of geographers and data analysts based here in the Ronald Reagan building. That's the team that is in place specifically to help our agency improve our decision-making by applying geographic analysis to development programming, all aspects of the program cycle, from the design of a program to the strategic planning of a program, the CDCS, that's another acronym that we use a lot, NAID, to monitoring programs, to evaluating programs. We're here to help AID, that's who our target audience is. We work in missions directly, we work here in Washington offices. And the ultimate objective with all of this is to really turn data into decisions. We aren't just generating data and making it available for the sake of it. We're really trying to affect and improve the kinds of decision-making that goes on in this agency in all of the sectors in which we work, in all of the diverse countries and cultures in which we work. And this partnership that we have had with NASA and continue to grow into the future is helping us do that.
Well, this has been a fabulous partnership. We've been building this collaboration between these two agencies, and frankly, with not just the two agencies, but across the U.S. government, as Dan described, but also with countries around the world. This is a partnership that we've talked about needing to expand and find new ways. So I invite all of you to engage with the team, both in NASA and the USAID, to see where we can take this and how we can further our development objectives. So with that, please join me in thanking the panel. Stay put. Okay. So before we get to questions and answers from the audience, I would like to ask the Administrator Bolden, Associate Administrator Postel, and our two astronauts to please join us here on the stage.
To the right. Okay.
While they're taking their seats, let me just note that this event is open press and is being televised live on the internet, so it is on the record. And while we sorry, sir. While we are pleased to have our friends from the media here in the room with us, I just want to remind everyone that the questions and answers are reserved for our guests and not for press questions. So let me lead off with the first question. Administrator Bolden, yes, you get the first one. So last year, NASA was ranked the best place to work in the federal government. True. So what's your secret?
That's an easy answer. I talked about it in the very beginning. The secret is the people. It really is. And we focus really on employee engagement, on trying to, I talk all the time about the critical importance of diversity and inclusion. Diversity means, numbers of people, but that's not the most important one to me. The most important is inclusion. Do we allow people to be heard? Do we listen? That's why, what was the little girl's name? What was her name? Alejandra? I mean, you know, Alejandra was listening. We may not think so, but that's critically important, to give everyone an opportunity to speak their piece. I happen to be a person who does not like to make decisions until I've heard from everybody around. But I think you all, you know, you probably operate much the same way, but it's really the people, I think.
Great, thank you. So our next question comes from El Salvador, from the USAID mission there, coming in by video. We have the video. Wow.
How can NASA help USAID prioritize geographic areas where people face the greatest risk from climate change?
So
I think you should take that.
Dan?
The question was the prioritization of areas?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a variety of answers. I mean, I think that what we try to do, first of all, working very closely with USAID and our development partners is so key in that process. I think, you know, overall, I think what makes SERVIR really exciting is really it's demand driven. And, you know, I think there's you know, sometimes this notion, you know, the old school way of doing things is building something and putting it out there, or, you know, some people will say throw it over the fence. But what we really try to do is listen, understand what the cares and concerns are of the countries, and then try to bring to bear and make that match of, do we have tools, do we have assets that can really help with that issue that country has. And again, I can't stress enough the value of reaching beyond just NASA, but reaching out to our other partner U.S. government agencies. We've learned so much, for example, with Department of Interior through their land cover work, USGS through their FUSE network, and really partnering as the whole of government to be able to address those issues.
I can add a little. This question is one that we're getting in the context of climate services a lot, which is the idea of how do we use information about the future climate to help us prepare. And we have recently also launched the Climate Services for Resilient Development Partnership, and NASA has brought this really incredible downscaled data set of sort of future climate conditions. And so we are challenged now to make that useful. And the way to do that is to combine where we see the largest, perhaps, changes in climate intersecting with social vulnerability or physical infrastructure. And so it sounds like a good project that we could take on to develop something like that.
That's great. So why don't we take a question from the audience? We do have a couple folks with mics. So raise your hand, they'll come to you with the mic. Please tell us who you are and where you work. There's one down. Oh, one right here. Okay, very good.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lazage. I work in the Bureau for Policy Planning and Learning. I have a question for the astronauts. They say that we went to the moon to discover Earth, and I was just wondering, in your experience being in outer space, if you discovered something new about Earth.
The first impression I had of Earth on my first flight from the space shuttle, we launched at night, and a few minutes later we were going over Europe, and it was daytime. And I thought, wow, when I first saw the Earth in daylight, and I remember thinking, those are colors I've never seen before, like shades of blue that I'd never seen before, which was amazing. But, and that's from the oxygen in the water, and I'm not sure exactly the physics behind it, but that was really an impression that I had. And another impression I talked about earlier was how at nighttime, you don't necessarily see the population on Earth, but you can really see where wealth is. And I guess we all know that, but to see it, it really hit home. About how folks on Earth are living in different conditions. And being up in space, it was kind of almost a surreal experience to look back on the home planet.
So we took sorry, please.
Samantha, yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, I don't have anything particularly smart to add, but I mean, obviously, it's not like I went out there and all of a sudden I made myself a huge discovery about Earth. I mean, I'm not that smart. And you just develop yourself as a person, a different relationship with your planet, that's for sure, in terms of just knowledge. I mean, you just know so much about it. You know, when you first get up there, you know, you're really tied to this GPS map that we have to figure out where you are. And then when you've been up there for 200 days, you kind of just, you don't even have to look out the window sometimes. It's amazing. You just have to float kind of towards the cupola, and you start seeing the color of the light that shines through, and you already guess by that whether you're over Africa or over Europe or over Asia, just because you get this subconscious almost understanding of the different colors of the Earth. So it becomes a very familiar place. I mean, it's like the whole planet becomes your backyard in a way. So, you know, a very different personal relationship with the planet, for sure.
Wow. So we took a poll of AID staff of what question we should be asking here. And so the top question was, how can the data NASA collects help to achieve USAID's mission of ending extreme poverty on Earth? You want to take
that? Let me go back to something that Terry said, and it's, I don't know the answer to the question, but I think a hint might be the fact that the way you view Earth, you view the spaceship on which we all live from the vantage point of space. It is a new awakening about wealth versus poverty, and it is stark, as Terry put it. You know, you really don't see borders except those that are created by human beings. And they're generally borders that are created either by warfare or by one group having lots of wealth and the other group not. And I think just as we use the data on floods, early projection of you know, where we're going to have a flood area and we evacuate people, at some point we have to pay attention to the data. You know, what the human eye sees about wealth here and poverty there, and decide to do something. I've heard people say that one of the reasons that opponents of earth science in NASA, you know, people who oppose our provision of data on climate change, is because if you admit that it is a problem or an issue, then you have a moral obligation to do something about it. So I would say if more people, the reason I want more people to have an opportunity to fly in space is because I don't believe you can look at this planet from that vantage point and not be bothered by what you see, knowing what really exists down here, knowing what's really going on. My favorite image is one of the Middle East. It looks so incredibly peaceful, and then you allow yourself to, you remind yourself of what's going on down there, and you, all of a sudden you just go, okay, why? What can I do? You know, what can I do when I go back to make a difference? And I hear that in Sam and in Terry, and I've heard it in almost every astronaut who's come back.
Right, just note that you mentioned having more people going into space. I'm sure there are more in the audience here. Would love to take you up on that.
And on stage.
We're ready.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Yeah, and from my own experience, working and living in Guatemala, and I did a lot of work with Maya archaeology, and you know, the Maya were one of the most advanced civilizations. They had unbelievable science and math and understood the motion of planets. But around 800 AD, the civilization collapsed. And most research now says that it was a result of climate change. Mm-hmm. And the Maya, you know, they did not have access to groundwater, and this civilization, which had existed for thousands of years, suffered a near complete collapse. And you know, one asked themselves, had the Maya had the tools, had they had the ability to look from space and understand what was going on, to be able to see what was going on and understand the change of what was coming, could they have done something about that? And today, I use that same analogy for today. Today we have these tools. We have the ability to understand through climate models, understand future climate scenarios. We have an understanding of what's happening to our planet right now. It's so important to have open data and the sharing of data and the sharing of knowledge, and working, like we talked about before, with unbelievable students and the youth around the world to be able to take that data and we convert that data into information to really make a difference.
And I would just give an example, because I mean, some of this stuff sounds and is very technical, but it does translate, I think, into a lot of the things we do day to day. Let's, a couple quick things. Let's just talk about Feed the Future. We're investing $1 billion a year in agriculture. Well, weather has a huge impact on agriculture. So as our fantastic teams think about how to maximize the results from that and work with people in villages in dozens and dozens of countries around the world, it's really helpful to be able to optimize our results based on the information that we're getting that, oh, the water is, the volumes are changing, or the paths are changing, or the temperatures are changing. And I don't know of anybody who's got that crystal ball who knows exactly how climate change is going to play out. So we have to be in a constant revise, learn, get more data kind of mode and making adjustments. And I think this kind of data can help. There's another whole thing some of you may know about. It's called, you can go on the web and find it immediately, globalforestwatch.org. It is absolutely mind-blowing what technology can do. They take all the Earth images over the entire planet's forests, and using Google servers, because it's a public-private partnership, we have multiple governments, NGOs, we're supporting it. Google servers crank away for 48 hours. They compare every single pixel covering every single forest, and then they can tell us every 15 days where is there deforestation, where is there reforestation, what's going on. And you know that in a lot of cases, deforestation has had very negative impacts on local communities, indigenous people, and a lot of folks with whom we work. That real-time data, which Dan was trekking through the jungles to get, every one of you can get on your computer right now. You can even set email alerts to tell you if your favorite national park is being threatened, and it will email you if there's any changes. I don't think our imaginations have even fully tapped all the possibilities that we have in working with NASA, in whether these areas or the things the Middle East Bureau and others are doing in terms of turning this data into things that will make a difference to the day-to-day lives of people in incredibly remote villages or extremely poor people in Kibera slum or whatever.
So we're going to take a break from that beautiful image on the screen there and get another question from the field from Ethiopia, and then we'll go to the audience.
Hello, I'm Melat Getahon with the USAID mission in Ethiopia. Many Ethiopians depend on livestock for their livelihoods, which again depends on the availability of pasture and water. So my question is, could NASA assist in producing pasture and water availability predictions 3 months in advance for dry and pastoral areas?
Okay, you got
okay. I think that's, these are the types of things that we really strive to do. We're working on some similar pasture and rangeland management capabilities in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. We've talked about doing it in places in Africa like Ethiopia. Again, partnering, there's the FuseNet project, of which of course USAID and USGS and NASA and others participate, and really teaming with groups like that. So I think that these are the types of applications and really understanding how to really bring some of the assets to bear. Those are definitely the types of things that we could do and are very interested in supporting those types of things.
Let me add just a quick thing here, because we all talk about the world, and we're concerned about what's happening in other countries. Right here at home, we supported the Farm Forum that Speaker Boehner sponsored in Ohio several months ago. And Mike Freilich, who heads our Earth Science Division, happened to go out. We sent a big team of people out there, and we were giving briefs on how you use satellite data to help farmers with their crop planning, their water resources management right here in the U.S. And the speaker said, I had no idea that NASA, provided this kind of information, and then wanted to know what else is available, the same as the young lady asked from Ethiopia. National Forest Service, every fire season, We try to feed them data that comes from infrared imaging satellites on hotspots. Because if the Forest Service can find out where a hotspot is before it becomes a fire, it's much easier to stick a hose in the ground and tamp down a hotspot before it erupts. But those are just examples of things that are done right here at home. And they expand, you know, when we see them utilized here, we can get them into other places in the world. But don't discount the value of what you do every single day in developing new tools and new systems. And don't let your when I talked about dreaming, it's important. That's one of the things that I love about NASA and I love about being in the organization is that we're just full of dreamers, and we put ourselves at risk all the time because, as people say, it's really hard to justify the fact that you're pursuing a dream. It's hard to explain that to people, but that's what you do, you know, and you've got to do more of it.
I just wanted to add as well, thank you very much, that related to that specific question too, we do have an activity working with some of our colleagues at Jet Propulsion Laboratory that are looking actually at crop yield and building in some of those longer term forecasts. So it's really ultimately, that's the direction that we're headed, to really get ahead of it and look at food security.
Great.
Can I just, a little bit more specific for the USAID Ethiopia question, I think many people may know this, but you can measure photosynthetic activity on the ground, which is a measure of pasture area. We can also correlate seasonal water bodies with rainfall information for places where those water bodies aren't visible from satellite data typically. And so the questions there about water availability and pasture, there are techniques to do that, and there are tools that do that. And some of the tools that are being developed for Pakistan and for other parts of the world using those data sets could be adapted for Ethiopia, most likely.
See, this is exciting. When we talk about working together, we can answer each other's questions.
That was supposed to be NASA's answer.
Right, but we've learned, again, we've learned results frameworks and everything like that. So
you've taught me.
That's right.
Yeah, I just note that he did say the Mayan civilization collapsed because of climate change, not because of results framework. Let's be clear on that.
Because of results framework.
Let's take a question from the audience.
Results framework.
There's one down here. Yeah, second row.
Thank you very much for your presentations. My name is Victor Bolden. I'm the Bureau Environmental Officer for Latin America and the Caribbean. I noticed on your map of hubs that you're missing one in South America, and I was wondering if there's any plans to develop one there. I'm thinking of not just for disasters like yesterday's earthquake in Chile, but also for issues like the coffee rust epidemic in the region, which has really affected our food security programs, and also for things like monitoring flooded forest in the Amazon basin, which are really important fishery production areas and could really help indigenous peoples manage their fisheries. Those are just a couple of things that I think we could really use.
So before we get to the answer, that I know Administrator Bolden has to go to another meeting.
I just wanted to thank you all so much for allowing us to come over and letting us be a part of this town hall. Hopefully you now get a feel for how important we think the partnership is. We think it's absolutely vital, and you know, ideas, dreams, all that kind of stuff, let us know, because I think what we do together is just critically important. And thanks very much for allowing me to be a part of it. And I'm going to leave you in the hands of our capable team here, but I apologize for having to leave. Thank you. Thanks for that.
So the question of expansion, I'll start with what I can say, given that this is open to the press, which is West Africa is planning to start up next, and that should be public soon, and we're excited about that. The model that we're following now given that this is such a local capacity building program, is that USAID missions express an interest in expanding to E3. And we work with them on all of the preparations to make sure that we have the local ownership of SERVIR within the region, and that we help provide all of the backstopping and the access to NASA at the global level. South America has done an assessment to see if this would be a useful program to expand to that region. And so we'll have to see what they think and how they view this investment versus others. But certainly they're thinking about it.
So we're out of time. So I know there are other people who have questions. I know we have My USAID. We have other ways of getting some questions posed to the panel here as a way we can share those ideas and so forth with the whole agency and with NASA. So we'll follow up with that. Before we close, let me just say that that Terry and Samantha have agreed to be down front. If anybody wants to come down and meet and greet them, we'll have a little bit of a receiving line for them down here. We do ask, just given their time and the number of people who would like to meet them, that they will not be signing autographs, and they will please refrain from taking personal pictures. But however, I note that our photography team here at AID will be taking candid photos during the meet and greet, and they'll be posting those on My USAID for anybody who would like to have them. So with that, let me thank again our colleagues from NASA for joining us today, and looking forward to continuing this partnership going forward.